Hello, and welcome to the Enneagram in a Movie podcast, part of the Awareness to Action podcast network. This is the podcast that looks at one film in each episode and uses it to explain the 9 types and 3 instinctual biases of the Enneagram model of personality. One movie, one type. My name is Mario Sakura, and I'll be joined by Maria Jose Munita and Tamer Zanatti. We are the principals of Awareness to Action International, a global consulting and training company that specializes in practical applications of the Enneagram. You can find out more about us and our work at awareness-to-action.com. In the meantime, make some popcorn, sit back, and enjoy the show. So hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Enneagram in a Movie podcast. This is the part 2 of our conversation with Tom Condon. Last episode, we talked about the movie Jerry Maguire and Enneagram Type 3. And since we had the pleasure and the luxury of having Tom with us, we wanted to go on and talk about some other things, some of them movie related and some of them not. I'm Mario Sakura, and I'm joined, as always, with Maria Jose Munita.
Hi there.
And again, we have with us the legendary Tom Condon. Tom, how are you?
I think legendary. Doesn't that mean you're old?
It does, yes. But I'm being nice, Tom.
Interesting.
You can be old and not legendary. So
this is true. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I was aiming for that.
All right. So Tom's an old and good friend of both Maria Jose and I. We've spent a lot of time together over the years in various Enneagram conferences, and whenever we happen to find ourselves in the same city at the same time. That has included some interesting places over the years. So it's we've had a lot of fun together and always enjoy talking with Tom. And he's one of the Enneagram teachers, as I was saying before, that I have learned from. Tom and I take different approaches to things in a lot of ways, but I have a lot of respect for Tom and his work. It's intelligent and thoughtful and focused on results, which I appreciate.
You know, I also appreciate the integrity of your work, Tom, and how you're willing to think about things you believe in or your experience and take a fresh look at things. I don't see that often.
Yeah, what's that all about, Tom? What's that thinking thing?
It's reality based.
Okay, good. All right. So, speaking of reality based, Maria Jose, has some questions. We have some topics we're going to talk about. But go ahead, Maria Jose.
Yeah. So, as you were saying, I have spent a lot of time hanging out with you two. And for the people who are listening to us, you might not believe what these two talk about, but so you would think that they talk about Enneagram theory or very kind of high level theories
High-minded,
about
yes.
High-minded, yes.
Yeah.
Now they might. I don't see this as a high-minded thing, but
so
not when
you're around.
Not when you're
okay. So maybe it's just me that you're pretending, but so I need you to explain to me, what is it about zombie movies that you older teachers of the Enneagram enjoy so much? Because it's not just you. I've had experiences with Ross as well, and there's something in my view, a bit pathetic, but you seem to really, really enjoy zombie movies. So what is it about these movies that you enjoy so much?
Good zombie movies.
Okay, that makes a difference.
There aren't that many. But there's a lot of really crappy ones. The crappy ones lack the depth and the texture and the themes and the implications that the good ones have.
Yes. So first of all, zombie movies are just cool. Okay. I mean, there's just nothing cooler than zombies. The idea of these soulless, mindless creatures roaming the earth, for one thing. There are also profound philosophical questions about this. In fact, there is this whole question in philosophy called the zombie dilemma, right? If you take a human and they're exactly the same as a human is, but they have no soul, no anima. What are you left with, right? So this is much more high-minded than you might realize, Maria Jose. But in reality, it's just this cool idea that there are these creatures attacking you, and the only way to stop them is to bash them in the head. I mean, what's not to love?
Well, also, they do crop up when the economy turns down, when there's natural disasters, when there's pandemics. They pop up a little more, and it has to do with reflecting a feeling, I think, that people have in a broad way. But that's all the thought I've ever given to it. I mean, they're zombie movies. What's the matter with you?
Do you see any correlations in zombie movies with the Enneagram?
No, not particularly. Well, between fast zombies and slow zombies, slow walkers, obviously 3 and 9.
Yeah. Yes. So for those of you,
that's just common sense.
Yes. So for anybody who is not, an aficionado of zombie movies, there are basically two kinds. There's the fast zombies and slow zombies, right? And the slow zombies are the ones who are just kind of, bobbing along slowly and stupidly, whereas the fast zombies are rabid. Tom, give me your top 2 or 3 zombie movies for people who are interested in exploring this topic further.
Are we going to cut this part out?
No. This is great. This is
interesting.
This is what our fans want, Tom.
All right. Okay. Well, Shaun of the Dead, 28 Days Later. What would be another one? I'm not sure. Juan of the Dead, the Cuban one.
Yes.
That was pretty good.
I think that movie, when I heard it from you, because I've never watched one, that thought will never leave my kind of mind because of it was interesting.
Well, this is how it starts to affect people, and it really leads to some useful therapeutic inroads.
Yes. So I'm with you there on Shaun of the Dead, the greatest of the zombie comedies. Very funny movie. 28 Days Later, a fast zombie classic. I will say that 28 Days Later, and then there was 28 Weeks Later. 28 Days Later is probably the only movie in my adult life that just scared the pants off me, right? I remember seeing that in a theater and then going home to my empty house. It was before I was married, and turning on every light in the house as it freaked me out. I also agree Juan of the Dead was a great one. I'm going to give some credit to World War Z. Okay, the Brad Pitt
that was a
movie.
good film, actually.
Yeah, I think so. It didn't get the recognition it deserved. I'm also going to throw in there the original Dawn of the Dead about the shopping mall. And the remake was good too, but the original was great.
Yeah, the one with Sarah Polley.
Yes. And Ving Rhames, yes.
Also, there was one about old people in London where the
right.
I can't remember the name of it, though. There were scenes where the old person was walking on a walker and the zombie was a slow zombie, so he outran them. That kind of thing.
All right, good. So zombies are cool. We've established that. We've established that certain Enneagram teachers have a bizarre fixation on zombie movies. When we have Russ on the show, we're going to have to talk about zombies again, as well as Pulp Fiction, which I know Tom's not a big fan of. Tom's not a Quentin Tarantino fan, right? So
that was a good film.
Oh, you liked it? Okay. All right, good. Okay. So let's transition here. Let's talk a little bit more about movies and
try and ask a serious question next time.
I wanted people to see another aspect of two Enneagram gurus. It's not just people who are full of themselves talking about serious stuff. I mean, you're human beings, which is a
we're
good
just
thing.
a bunch of idiots. Yeah.
No. In my mind, I think that it's good to be a real human being, a complete human being that can be playful and enjoy other things rather than the Enneagram.
I'm not liking the way you're pronouncing the words human being.
Tom and I also go to museums. Okay, can I point that out that we've been to
I go to
a lot of the world's
well.
great museums together? Yeah. All right. Okay, just fair enough. Okay, so Let's talk a little bit about movies. Go ahead, Mariose.
So, as we said in the previous podcast, you've been working with movies in your practice, Tom, for a long time. So what drew you to movies as a way of understanding the Enneagram? And do you still use them? Do you still find them useful?
The story I told before had to do with suddenly realizing I was seeing the Enneagram styles in movies, and I hadn't realized it, and began to sort of write about it and offer up insights based on people's needs to get more skilled and practiced at working with the Enneagram, kind of like a panel. I haven't revised the book in a few years. And one of the reasons is that people are, at least on social media, kind of doing something that has two aspects to it for me. One is where they'll snap judge a public figure without very much information. And then the other side of that is sometimes that's a facet of learning, because the Enneagram is easy to learn but difficult to master. And so people will find it useful to try to type public figures, which, by the way, I believe you can do. It had that purpose originally, to help people just get good at it. And then there is this other side to that where I don't think they're getting good at it. I think they're playing a party game. And that aspect of it is pretty unfortunate and nothing you want to enable.
I agree with you. I also believe that you can type public figures, but you have to be really careful about it, right? And I personally try to avoid it because I usually don't want to put in the energy to assuming I have it right, or feeling comfortable that I have it right. But I feel much more comfortable doing it with movies because whereas with a public figure, you only see a glimpse of them, right? You see part of their life, but a movie's kind of a self-contained element, right? The actor doesn't, the character doesn't go home and do different things, when you're not watching, right? It's all right there. So you could say, well, based on this movie, this character looks like this. And we use movies in our trainings as typing exercises, right? Show movie clips. So we find that to be useful as well. But I would agree with you that there's a lot of half-assed typing out there that goes on and a lot of really superficial stuff.
Well, when somebody pulls it out of the top of their head and they just think that you can actually type based on very little information, they're not really taking it seriously, whatever else they're doing. And then, lots of people say you can't type public figures, but I think that's entirely dictated by the amount of research you do.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Yeah. And I know that's something you spend a lot of time on, right? That you're cautious and about assessing people, but that you do your homework on it, which is something I've always respected about you.
Homework is, it's sort of like typing a real person. You may need several passes at it. You may need to know within your own skill when you've almost got something or when something is a clue versus something is definitive.
Awareness to Action offers a unique approach to applying the Enneagram professionally with leaders and organizations, as well as for personal development. What makes us stand apart is our Enneagram expertise and focus on understanding human nature.
We know people because we see people. And this is a skill set that can be taught and learned. Human nature is complex and simple at the same time. Our mission is to help people see clearly and act accordingly. Why? Because the ability to see ourselves and others clearly and honestly is essential. It enables us to act in more adaptive and useful ways.
The multicultural team at Awareness to Action will help you learn tools and practices to become more aware and also to understand and engage people more effectively. Learn more at awareness-to-action.com. Join us at 2021 for exciting learning opportunities.
So what changed in your book? What kind of edits, not the specific ones, but what are the main things that changed between editions to address what you just mentioned?
Just more. Yeah, more films. And I've been taking notes on films the last few years, even though I haven't included them in the book. But I still kind of keep an eye out for it.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think we need to make the point that we have to be careful with these things because, as we are living proof of, any idiot can start a podcast and start talking about Enneagram in the movies, right? So, buyer beware when you watch these things on YouTube or listen to people talk about it. Make sure you and folks are doing their homework.
Or just knowing when you don't know, just knowing
Yes.
what you don't know. That's really helpful.
And to be open-minded and consider our assessment as a hypothesis that can change if we hear or see something kind of new information.
And stay open.
So what movies would you recommend for people who are interested in the Enneagram?
I saw a movie a couple of years ago that is on Netflix called The Founder with Michael Keaton. And he's playing a 3. He's playing Ray Kroc, the guy who
McDonald's
created McDonald's, basically.
Yeah.
And the movie is all about his search for having a good assembly line for making hamburgers and the various steps he took, throughout. I don't know why we needed a movie about that, but it's not a bad movie. It's just kind of odd. And he kind of stole McDonald's from a couple of brothers in Southern California who started the original ones. And they're played by a 1 and a 2. And he's playing a 3. And it's pretty obvious. That's a pretty good one. It's still around. The Imitation Game is pretty good for 5s. For a kind of microscopic
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah, who I think might be a 5 himself.
He always seems to play one very frequently.
Yeah, he tried to play Julian Assange in a not very good movie.
Oh, really? Yeah.
But he played him as a 5 also, which Assange is a 5.
Okay. He's kind of also the latest Sherlock, right? In the BBC series, and plays a good 5 character there.
Yeah. There's a movie called Grandma with Lily Tomlin, and it was out a few years ago, and it's a really good 8. And she barrels her way through most of the movie and then catches herself and starts to apologize. And this is it. There's a kind of contrast and a kind of arc that 8s go through anyway. But that's a good film. Inside Out, that cartoon, seemed to me like it had a 7 and a 4 in it.
Yeah,
I still haven't seen that. Yeah.
You should.
And
you see that too, yeah?
And a 1 also, Lewis Black yelling. And there's a movie by Jim Jarmusch called Patterson.
Oh, yeah.
And he's playing a 9. I thought
9.
pretty conclusively. And his girlfriend is a 7. The Iranian actress.
Yes. He was the bus driving poet.
That's it.
Who every day would walk home to the same place, past the same mailbox. Great.
And there's an old movie that you might look for. It's available through various venues, which is a great 2. And the movie is The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. It's great for Enneagram studies. It was a big hit back in the day. Any Woody Allen movie, any Mel Gibson movie, you have phobic and counterphobic 6s for the most part. There's a movie I mentioned to Mario called 13 Conversations About One Thing. And it's got a great, Alan Arkin is also a 6, and he's in it. And it's got a great 6-7 dynamic where the 6, Alan Arkin, is jealous of the good cheer of a 7 co-employee, and he gets him fired and then goes through the sort of agony about what he's done. And the cheerful employee takes the firing kind of painfully for the moment and then goes out and gets another better job. And this keeps happening all through the movie. The intent is to, bring him down, and he just bobs higher into positivity. And it's very funny, but it's very vivid too.
Great. I'll add to the 9 thing. I'll add Wonder Boys, which I just watched again the other day.
There's a good one.
Michael Douglas character. There's a good 4, a good 7 in there as well. So I highly recommend that movie.
Yeah.
Going now to your practice as an Enneagram teacher, and you've been in more countries than Mario has been teaching the Enneagram, which is an interesting accomplishment.
It's quite a feat. You've been a lot of places to teach the Enneagram, Tom, haven't you?
I travel a lot.
Yeah. So, in your experience, how do students learn better? What is the context in which the learning can be enhanced and be deeper and more effective? Do you have any particular things that work?
In my background, there's NLP, and NLP has a whole set of practices for what you call modeling. And it's what 3s do in their defense, but it's also got to do with modeling a mentor, let's say, having a role model. And one time I went to a shamanism workshop with an anthropologist, Michael Harner, who had been studying shamanism in South America and had made a bunch of kind of very simple methods out of it. And I thought, that'd be great to model how somebody becomes a shaman. And so I asked him, I said, what would you, I explained what modeling was. I said, what would you say is the first step? And he said, well, have a nervous breakdown. And that kind of rocked me back. But it also comes to mind in relation to working with people as clients and also in teaching seminars. Everybody comes at it from a different angle and different set of life circumstances and a different need. Effective teaching. I mean, one of the things about in-person workshops, which we can't do right at the moment because we've got a pandemic, is that you might read about the Enneagram, but then you see it in 3D. It comes alive. It's actual people speaking out of their experience, and you can correlate what you might have absorbed intellectually or through conversation with others. You can really kind of get an idea of how it's an active happening. It's something that the person does rather than something that they are. Yeah. And in approaching things, I don't know. I mean, I usually teach how to use the Enneagram to grow and change, and try and keep it sensory grounded. Try and keep it in the world rather than getting too abstract. I understand why people have kind of bigger chunk models of how to grow and change within the Enneagram. I'm kind of aiming for doubles and triples rather than home runs. And
explain bigger chunk, Tom, for people who are not familiar with that, how you're using that term there.
Well, your question sends me into a thought pattern that I often have when I'm meditating and imagining myself on Mars, thinking back and looking back at my tiny little life on Earth, and everything suddenly seems meaningless.
Yes.
Or
yes.
I'm trying to get in touch with broader powers and manifest the greatness that I sense is within me in my daily life.
Contrast that with smaller chunks.
Well, so a big chunk would be you're on a journey, and you climb a hill, and you can see where you have come from, and you can see where you're going. Yeah. That's the value of big chunks, in a way. You learn about the Enneagram, you learn about the possibilities, you get inspired, and that inspiration maybe doesn't translate into tangible, definite steps, but it is something that motivates you and propels you forward. And then a small chunk, by contrast, would be taking things one step at a time. It's sort of like the paradox of the two is in the phrase, think globally, act locally, or the beginning of a 1,000-mile journey begins with the first step. It's that sort of thing. And people will sometimes get overly focused on the small pieces or overly focused on the big picture. But somehow there's a balance to both of them and a high side to both of them, an advantage to both of them.
Yeah. Kind of a forest and trees sort of thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's, again, one of the things I appreciate about your work is that it is, okay, so what do we do, right? It's nice to have a big idea, but now what, right?
Yeah. How does it translate into daily life?
So, Mario, in your experience, what is something that works so that the learning really happens?
The discipline of practice, right? So, I mean, first of all, it starts with someone who's willing to actually do the work, right? Instead of just talk about stuff. I had a coaching client today, not a corporate client, but he wanted me to coach him around the Enneagram, right? And each time I would start trying to put his feet on the floor and say, okay, but what are you going to do? He would start going back to, all the horrible things that happened in his childhood, right? And how that shaped him. And, and so it has to start with somebody being willing to, okay, am I going to take some action here? And being able to ground things in practical applications, right? So what does this mean to my daily life? Right. How will this make me a better husband, a better father, or a better worker, or something like that, so that it's not just a bunch of talk about stuff.
Also going near shadows, going near the third rail in someone's experience, what they're defended against feeling or knowing about themselves. If there's some motivation and some willingness, then, the quote unquote unhealthy reactions of their Enneagram style are usually driven by something that occurs right before the reaction. In other words, you get close to something that gives you the willies, or that you've been walled off against for a long time, or trying to manage as a wound rather than feel it. Or it can be lots of things, but there's often a sort of holdover in the pattern to a defensive stance that somebody took earlier in life. And going near the feelings, or going near the experiences that are prevented by the defensive stance, is often pretty valuable, and a kind of it'll relax something within the person once they feel it, and that then makes discipline and implementing changes easier in daily life in the way that you're talking about.
Yeah, in my case, I think something pretty basic but useful is compassion. And I know that a lot of people say that. It's almost a cliche in the Enneagram, but I truly believe that when you talk in a compassionate way about the types, the different personalities and people, and help people see that what they're experiencing is, or that what they do is normal, really helps them open up to learning. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they get defensive. And I see it so much kind of this bad press about certain types. And the terms that we sometimes use are more negative, or our own biases make us talk more negatively about certain kind of people. And that goes against people learning, I think, or seeing themselves clearly.
Yeah. So one of my guidelines is captured in the phrase from Ralph Emerson, the philosopher. People don't seem to realize that their opinion of the world is a confession of character, meaning in particular, meaning if you go to an Enneagram conference and you hear people talking about the Enneagram types that they like and dislike, missing the point spectacularly, I would say, then that's also a confession of character. They're talking about what is unintegrated in them, what potentials they sense they have, but they don't think that they have them. But somebody else has them. 7s have them. 9s have them, and then also what they dislike will turn out to be an Enneagram style that they're connected to, or the Enneagram style of a parent that they're still carrying and having a fight with, something like that.
So which Enneagram type do you like the least, Tom? No, I'm joking. Never mind.
No,
Well, you have to find a way to sympathize with all of them and be fair to all of them. And after a while, that's a good thing. I mean, it's a projection wrecker, for one thing, for a 6.
Yeah.
You can't really project. You can't really condemn some aspect of humanity and embrace the rest of it.
Are you interested in learning more about our approach to the Enneagram? Go to awareness-to-action.com and check out our certification program. We offer a clear, concise, business-friendly, and science-minded approach while maintaining the depth of traditional approaches to the system. At Awareness to Action International, we're the leading innovators in the theory and pragmatic applications of this system to all aspects of the work environment, including leadership and personal development, team building, diversity and culture, and managing change. However, this approach is not just for the business world. A lot of people who attend our trainings do so for their own self-development or spiritual growth. Our certification program is one of only a handful of curricula accredited as a school by the International Enneagram Association. It is currently being conducted virtually and combines live sessions with asynchronous learning. Again, find out more at awareness-to-action.com.
So what's the concept that you have the hardest time teaching in a positive light, or that you have had? It could be a personality style. It could be a theoretical concept that you don't respect or didn't respect, and now you do. So is there anything that you have a hard time teaching in a positive light?
Well, I don't think I would teach it.
Yeah, let me give a context for that. Something that, Maria-Jose and I talk about sometimes is how we have to be careful about letting our biases slip in. For me, for example, I have a hard time, and this won't come as a surprise to you, but I have a hard time seeing and understanding male 2s, right? To me, it's just like, why would that be? Right. I mean, not why would I have that issue, but why would there be a male 2? I tend to be blind to them. Right. And again, that reflects, some of my issues and biases, as you said there. Right. It's easy to see
and
why.
They often manifest the style differently than female 2s.
Mm-hmm.
They really do.
Yeah. Or when we're teaching the instinctual biases, we sometimes see ourselves being a bit more negative about transmitting or preserving than navigating, or sexual and self-press rather than social, in our case, in the other terminology. So it's not like we don't like them, but instinctively or non-consciously, we play it in a way that they don't seem that good sometimes.
Well, I mean, those are all things to work on. I mean, from my standpoint, anytime I found a bias, I would really try to kind of pull up the ego weed that was, involved in it and figure out what it meant about me. I mean, if, Mario, you're an 8 and you got a built-in connection to 2. Right. If you're reacting to male 2s, then that says something.
Yeah.
It's for the mill.
Absolutely. And what's interesting for me is not that I react to them in a negative way. I just have a hard time seeing them. Right. Yeah. When I'm assessing someone, it's like the last thing to occur to me. Oh, this is a 2. Right. It's not a hostility in a sense so much as
but there could be an I statement in that somewhere.
Sure. Of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I think that was the point Maria-Jose was making regarding the instinctual biases, is that, it is, in our minds, the instinctual biases are very much reflections of values, right? So, we pay more attention to this than we do to this, and therefore tend to just place a higher value on that domain. And therefore, when you talk about the other domains, can be a tendency to see more of the things that are, not so great about it than the things that are great about it. So,
for me, the instinctual biases are really complicated because we talk about somebody being a self-preservation subtype, but there are people who are equally self-preservation and social. In my experience, there are people who have all 3. And then there are people who are very strong within, let's say, self-preservation subtype, and the expression of the other subtypes are pulled through that. the ultimate motivation is still self-preservation, but the other ones are kind of warped in a certain way.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, we see
messy.
something very similar. Yeah, it is messy, and we see something very similar in that we tend to act out the second and third domains through the lens of our primary domain. In the same way, in our sense, that when you're leaning toward another strategy in some way. So, for example, me as an 8, when I kind of lean on that 2-ish strategy, I don't become a 2. I don't become 2-like. I do 2-ish kind of stuff in an 8-ish sort of way, right?
Right.
So this idea, something I'm curious, and I forget exactly what it was you said there that made me think of this, but so it's a different world, Tom, when, today than when you started teaching, when I started teaching, even when Maria Jose started teaching these things. There's when I first started learning the Enneagram, there were a handful of books. There was your material. There was, Don and Russ's. Actually, at that point, it was only Don on the books, and Helen and a few other things. Give me a state of the Enneagram from your perspective. And I know I'm kind of opening a door here that might not be that happy to talk about. But tell me how the Enneagram world's different.
We can't use the word viral anymore.
Yeah, this is true. It's taken on a different meaning, huh?
But it's gone in all kinds of directions. And that seems like it could have been predicted. Talking a little bit earlier about the party game Enneagram, and there's a way in which it's spread wide but trivialized. But then it's made to be applied. And so it is being applied. And being applied through a range of human endeavors. Ultimately, this will be used for somebody's highest aspiration and wanting to kind of transcend their personality limits. And then some idiot's going to use it for eugenics at some point. I mean, it just seems obvious. So the whole range. And then within the little Enneagram movement, I would say that about 2006, 2007, it started to sort of split in a subtle way, not an antagonistic way. But that's when business consulting came in, and the applications to business and team building and real world stuff. And then there was another arm of it that got more religious, or was more kind of formed by the theology that was already attached to the Enneagram, but it became a religion in and of itself at its worst.
Yeah.
At its best, it's sort of a big chunk framework for gauging how far you are progressing, and then all you have to do is add in the little chunks, the daily steps.
Yeah, I'll just note that 2006 was the year Awareness to Action was published. So it was a groundbreaking moment in Enneagram history. So
that's when I attended my first Enneagram workshop.
There you go. Ruined everything.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I feel hallowed and honored, and we're part of a sacred movement, or not.
So it's you make an interesting point. So there is this sort of democratization of the Enneagram, right? This proliferation, and there's always going to be a watering down of that. And there are some, it seems to me, who feel that it should be more closely held and more tightly held. Right. Mm. I know, for example, with myself, I tend to get frustrated with some of the memes that I see, and what type should you marry? And I've even seen like what's your Enneagram type birthday cake flavor, kind of things.
Yeah. What type breathes the most?
Right. There was one I saw recently of, which Enneagram types never think about the past or the future, which is interesting.
And then there was a whole list. Yes. And I thought every one of them was wrong.
So, but I also think, so there's the temptation, and I'll speak for myself here, to turn into the grumpy old man, of, these people are so shallow these days sort of thing. And yet, I think that's just part and parcel of what happens. And
Yes.
it's a sign that the Enneagram's getting out to more people. And that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not. And also, when you learn about the Enneagram, if it hits you in the right place, in the right way, it's sort of like buying a new car. You bought a Volkswagen, and now that's all you see on the road.
Mm-hmm.
You start looking for it everywhere, and and it's hard to really learn and integrate and go beyond your teacher's version of it and make it your own. And so that involves a lot of repetition as well. And you don't know when somebody's trivializing it or sounds like they're trivializing it, whether that's what they're doing or whether they're just, learning something that's really hard and detailed.
Yeah. So I agree. And also see that people, and we'll go through these phases, but we fall in love with the Enneagram. We see that it's useful. We like it. We see that it reflects what we're seeing in ourselves and other people. But then you continue to try building on it and trying to apply it theoretically to everything and trying to continue to grow the model, like all the types that do this, all the types that do that. And to me, when I see that, I think it can be fun, but to me, it's a lot more interesting to observe how it shows up in real people, how to learn by experiencing the growth of people or the struggles of people instead of trying to continue modeling and creating a bigger model that explains everything. Because the more you try to explain the subtleties, the less useful it's going to be.
Yeah, my angle on it was always, well, what do you do now? Once you learn these appalling things about your fallen state, which is pretty much all they were teaching when I first came across it. What do you do now? What kind of methods do you use? And there were a couple of methods. One was meditate and try to disassociate and try to, kind of recognize your pattern rather than react out of your pattern. And the other one was to go against your pattern, to kind of oppose it. You're a 1, you're judgmental. Knock that shit off, stop being judgmental.
Stop it.
Yeah, stop it.
The Bob Newhart thing, right?
The Bob Newhart thing. And so people would struggle that way. And sometimes it helps in a limited way, but it also kind of strengthens the reaction as well, Yeah. But people are different, even within Enneagram styles, amazingly. And they're at different phases in their life. They have different challenges. They have different personal histories. They have different, sort of dimensions of their experience that they disassociated from or sat upon. And they have different strengths. They have different combinations of some of these other distinctions we make. And yet they're individuals. That's another thing that needs to be kind of factored into it from my standpoint.
I'm stuck a little bit on, or I'm going back a little bit to, what you said about this idea of rejection and the backfire effect that happens there, right? I mean, if anybody's familiar with cognitive biases, we know that the more tightly somebody holds a point of view, the more tightly they will hold on to it when they, when somebody tries to disabuse them of the notion, right? And I think that happens on an individual level when we start to reject this thing, this, whatever we want to call it, an ego fixation or a pattern. And so I'm in full alignment, there that's the wrong, for me, it's the wrong approach to try and reject this fundamental aspect of ourselves. And so our approach is to work with the strategy, right? Work with our narratives about the strategy. So in my case, it's around striving to feel powerful. The problem I have is that I have these limited implicit definitions of what powerful means. And some of those implicit definitions carry maladaptive behaviors with them. I don't have to be nice to people, they have to be nice to me because that's what being powerful means. And so our approach is to start to challenge, or not challenge so much, but redefine those definitions, to rewrite those narratives. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you do anything similar to that, or what is your approach of kind of not resisting or not rejecting, but working with?
So with striving to be powerful, the thing I mentioned before would come into it. What happens right before you strive to be powerful, and what that gets you at a certain point. It gets you to a shadow. It gets you to some point of vulnerability, some way in which the person's defending themselves that may be outmoded or extraneous or obsolete, and usually relates to their earlier understanding of life and who they were and what was possible. And the other, I'm having a senior moment. What was the other part of that question?
Well, I was just about what your approach to kind of rather than working against or rejecting, working with what you have.
Sometimes if somebody is resisting a certain feeling, but it's there, sinking into that feeling, giving it its due, trying to cast around, you actually do this in a different sort of way, casting around for what the motivation is, what the person unconsciously thinks they're trying to do for themselves, how they're trying to defend themselves, for example, how they're trying to protect themselves. You would call it commitments, I think. And, what they're committed to is sort of the same way of talking about what we call secondary gains. What are the perceived unconscious advantages of continuing to react like an unhealthy 6, an unhealthy 8, an unhealthy 1?
Right.
And what is it that you think you're trying to do for yourself? And then I have NLP in my background also. With NLP, you're focused on the senses and what the sensory quality of an experience is rather than an abstract idea or a word that encompasses an experience. It's more like, what do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? What do you taste? What do you smell? What do you feel in your emotions versus what do you feel in your body? And then there are what they call submodalities, which is if a 6, for example, is scaring themselves, they don't do it with a small picture. They do it with a large picture. It's got to be big. It's got to be loom over them, maybe, be larger than they are. So they feel like maybe a child in relation to a giant image of an authority figure. There's a soundtrack to it. And sometimes the soundtrack's rather loud. It's sort of like sitting in the front row in one of those multi-theaters that we have now where the sound is really loud and the picture's looming over you. And then maybe there's anxiety in the chest and tension in the belly or vice versa. But they're not rigid, but they're consistent. And if you think about it, if you're going to scare yourself, you're not going to do it with a postage-sized picture of
it's inefficient.
A growling demon or something, or a zombie. A zombie.
A zombie. That's right. And it's not going to be a slow zombie. It's going to be a fast zombie.
It's going to be a fast zombie. Right? It'll be moving. Often the pictures are moving. They're movies rather than still frozen pictures. That's how you scare yourself. Yeah. So a given 6, they'll have some sort of set of sensory perceptions that are typical when they're scaring themselves. And approaching it that way is like a can opener. Sometimes it's another way to talk. You were talking about this before, Mary Jo, the way in which you can talk about Enneagram styles, and it's like being honest, but without being judgmental, where you can, sort of talk in this neutral way. Well, here's the high side, here's the low side. This is typical. Here are some strengths that you might not have recognized, that the model points out. And it's even more that way when you can talk about it in a sensory grounded way. Yeah. And then getting a person sort of aware of and in touch with how they are doing something to themselves. You could have terminology like a 6 is a fear type, but actually a 6 scares themselves. That's different. It's more active, it's more voluntary. Or you can talk about 9s having a mental fog that comes in and takes them over and they have amnesia for their priorities. But if you work with 9s and they say, well, I'm just seeing fog, there's a self hiding in that fog. And one of the ways that I find it useful to talk about that is to ask the person what their sense is of what they're hiding, how they're hiding. Hiding is a more active thing than saying, oh, well, the fog rolled in and I had to wait till the afternoon before the sun burned it off. And, that kind of thing.
Right.
Where it becomes an excuse.
Are you interested in learning more about our approach to the Enneagram? Go to awareness-to-action.com and check out our certification program. We offer a clear, concise, business-friendly, and science-minded approach while maintaining the depth of traditional approaches to the system. At Awareness to Action International, we're the leading innovators in the theory and pragmatic applications of this system to all aspects of the work environment, including leadership and personal development, team building, diversity and culture, and managing change. However, this approach is not just for the business world. A lot of people who attend our trainings do so for their own self-development or spiritual growth. Our certification program is one of only a handful of curricula accredited as a school by the International Enneagram Association. It is currently being conducted virtually and combines live sessions with asynchronous learning. Again, find out more at awareness-to-action.com.
It's interesting to me to hear this, Tom, because it's kind of a different angle to what we do, but they complement each other. When we talk about the strategies and the root of the strategies being a feeling need, and then that affects the way we think, and then the actions. And I think all of that you can describe as well by these things you're talking about. It's the logic of the person. It's how we do it, the things we say to ourselves or think about when we are in these patterns. So it's interesting to see how it adds these different perspective to something similar.
Well, it would add to an auditory story. A person tells themselves, "Oh, I missed my plane. But what do you expect? I'm Irish. Bad luck follows me everywhere." But in addition to that, there's movies in the mind's eye or pictures that are also part of the story. And then there's feelings in the body or habitual emotions that are also part of the story.
Yeah, it's for me, it's the idea of the Enneagram as a verb rather than nouns, right?
Yeah.
It's this idea that it's this, cluster of things that we do. And whether that doing is, feeling certain things, thinking certain things, or acting in certain ways, but it's kind of a label that we put on behaviors and actions and feelings, rather than an ontological, platonic category in some way. It's I was talking with somebody earlier about this today, and it's, you're a singer because you sing. Right? You don't sing because you're a singer, right? You're not born something and therefore you do it. And that's how I feel about the Enneagram as well, right? We call you a 6 because you do these certain things, and that's the label we put on that, right? Whereas Maria Jose does these other things, and we put a different label on that, right? But it's really about the pattern of action.
And when people react strongly out of the low side of their Enneagram style, they're in a state of defendedness, from my standpoint. They're defending something. And usually what they're defending is kind of unconscious, or it's got to do with something in their history or some way in which they understood how to organize their experience, or a role that they fell into playing in their family system growing up. And so for me, the ontological part of it is what preceded them arranging themselves and using themselves in that particular way. And the past is not a cause, but it's a context in which certain behaviors get going.
So we've talked about the benefits or the good things about seeing and understanding the Enneagram as we do. And we also talked about the new trends or the new things that are coming up in the Enneagram world. So what do you envy about younger Enneagram teachers? What about what they are able to do?
The number of years they have ahead of them?
Yeah, so what would you take from them. And here, I've been teaching the Enneagram for 13 years already. So I don't see myself as young anymore. So I'm part of this question. So what is it that you would like, that you envy of these new teachers of the Enneagram?
This has history to it as well. I first got involved in it and became known when Don and Helen were at each other's throats, basically. And there were two versions of the Enneagram. They were fighting for primacy. They were fighting for territory. And it got worse when the IEA was created, because it's one of those umbrella organizations that's supposed to unify business competitors, but it just makes it more extreme. And I kept, and then there were lawsuits also, like Oscar Ichazo sued Helen Palmer. And I thought, basically, I had a perspective on it from the standpoint of using it to grow and change. I didn't agree with or want to join either party. I was friendly to everyone, but I had seen this before. I'd seen it in the NLP world where people were cutting each other's throats. And what I decided to do, and what I've come up against 40 or 50 times over the years, is I decided to double down on my own version of things rather than be a representative of one version or another, or somebody's body of knowledge, but not my body of knowledge. And in doubling down, it felt like the road was driving. It felt like it was the only thing to do. And people were talking back then in like the mid 1990s, for example. One of the Enneagram teachers had the idea that we should all agree upon 15 or 20 adjectives that described each Enneagram style and stick with those. And we shouldn't vary from it. The drive to make it into some sort of uniform thing. Whereas I didn't, the Enneagram's a model. Models aren't exactly real. They're replicas of something. And it was a really good description, a really good, deep, meaningful model in that sense. But people were talking about it like it was a real thing that belonged to them.
Yeah.
I just thought it was hopeless. And
that hasn't gone away, though.
Yeah.
No, actually, I went through it again recently. I don't, you go through these things less intensely each time, but
right.
There was some point of horror when I was online in some social media forum where I just thought, this is hopeless. I'm going back to what I know best. And when I've done that, I dig deeper each time.
Yeah.
And in the deeper digging, that's been really useful, because there wasn't, even back in the day, I knew nobody was seeing it the way I was seeing it. And I thought that there should be different versions of the Enneagram, although not fundamentally different, but different angles on the same thing. Yeah. And especially about using it to grow and change rather than joining a club, all this other stuff that people do with it.
I think we're aligned on that. We've talked about this, over the years, that, to assume that there's only one holy truth of the Enneagram is kind of foolish. It's a body of knowledge, and any body of knowledge that doesn't evolve and open itself to different perspectives and approaches is pretty useless as far as I'm concerned. There's a certain fundamentalism inherent in that point of view.
Yes, there is.
And it is one of the, I think and my comment earlier about that hasn't gone away because it does resurface, right? I think there is this, there's always this reaction. There was a woman who wrote a book about loose cultures and tight cultures, and how culture is always kind of shifting in response to, it gets tight, and then there's this reaction that needs to loosen it again. And then there's a reaction against the looseness, has to tighten again. And so this is always, it's lumpy in the way this plays itself out. And I see some of that in the Enneagram world today in kind of a troubling way. But I'm with you that there's there's, God made chocolate and vanilla for a reason, right? Because, people are different and will take different approaches as long as a model is internally and externally consistent. I'm okay with it, right? Internally consistent and that doesn't contradict itself, and externally in that it kind of describes what it claims to be describing, right? So, that's something I appreciate in your perspective on this.
So something that I've seen you both doing and that I've learned along the way to do as well is to...
Oh no, the zombies.
Yeah,
No. So before, the main way in which people learned about new stuff in the Enneagram was conferences. Now with the internet, you can learn pretty much anywhere. So in conferences, for those of you who don't go or listening, Mario and Tom have their own way of attending the presentations. And so Mario sits at the back, and halfway through the presentation, he leaves, even if he makes it to
halfway is generous. Yeah.
Yes. And Tom stands at the back or pops his head at the door and listens to a bit of it and then leaves. Now, I know that you both are curious about new stuff, and I've seen Tom, and I know that Tom, you listen to the recordings. So surprisingly, you know what's being said. You just don't stay for the whole presentation at the conference. So in this new world with the internet and all these virtual conferences, what's the equivalent of standing at the back and then listening to the recording or reading what's being written?
There's plenty of recordings and, courses you could sign up for if you wanted. And a lot of free stuff now, too.
But for you, how do you stand at the back in this new world?
I try to ignore it. I do. I get more out of ignoring it than I do out of paying attention to it. The tendency to stand in the back at real conferences, physical conferences, started some time ago because after I was somewhat known in the little context of the Enneagram world, if I stuck my head in the door, if I came into a workshop, I would hear a catch in the presenter's voice. And I just thought, between not wanting to put extra pressure, if that's what that meant, and also not wanting to leave halfway through the conference or halfway through the presentation, it was much better to leave right away. And I would get a sense of what they were saying and a sense of how they were saying it. And then I'd listen to the recordings later. But it was mostly that. And then I just kind of kept doing it.
So, Mario, in your case, how does it play out now?
I find myself less and less drawn into Enneagram discussions, certainly Enneagram feud. I've been working with the Enneagram for 27 years now. And honestly, even though it's a big part of my world, it's not a big part of my life, right? If that makes a difference, right? It's almost like a job. And I always say that if I were a plumber, I wouldn't go home and talk about pipes over dinner. So I try to, dip in every so often to see what's new and what's fresh. But I just, whenever I dip my toe into an Enneagram forum or, something like that, I really regret it and want to get out as quickly as I can. So Tom's more generous and more kinder, I think, than I tend to be. He's more gracious in being open-minded to what other people have to say. I find myself less and less interested in getting grumpier as I get older, unfortunately, at least related to the Enneagram, I think.
Also, I sort of don't want other people's vocabulary.
Yes.
In my vocabulary. I always thought it was important to develop your own examples, your own lived instances of using the Enneagram in whatever way. And I thought that was better.
I fully agree. And when we started writing Awareness to Action, I kind of cut down on the amount of Enneagram reading I was doing, at the time, because of that very thing. I wanted the ideas to be coming from my experience rather than things that I unconsciously picked up from other people. Yeah, that's a really important part. So I have one final question here. I don't know if you have anything else, Maria Jose, but I think we should wrap up soon. But we share the point of view that it's good to have different perspectives on the Enneagram, and and again, I think if you look at any body of knowledge, particularly about the psyche, the body of knowledge tends to, in some way, reflect the theorist. Right, the person who created the ideas. I certainly see that in my work. That's a lot of my emphasis tends to be a reflection of who I am.
Your opinion of the Enneagram is a confession of character.
Sure. Yes. I'm curious how that is for you, Tom. And in what way does Tom Condon come out in your application of the Enneagram?
The angle on it, that it should count for something and should lead to growing and changing. Like I said, there were very few options when I first got involved with it. And I think it was a polarity response on my part of, as a counterphobic 6, as a, thinking, well, this can't be all. This can't be it. And, there's a paucity of methods that go with this, but I know a lot of methods, and a lot of them really apply. And it was from that standpoint. And so it was kind of like saying, to the people who were saying, well, here's your Enneagram type. It kind of fell from the sky. It's genetic. You're stuck with it. You can do your best with it, and try to meditate on it and go against it. And I thought, there's so many other ways to approach this.
I like that. And again, that's one of the reasons why I appreciate your work so much, because it is about method. It is about, okay, I have this piece of knowledge. What do I do with it now? Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, how do I make my life different in some way?
Is there any particular term? Because we were talking in the previous question about terminology, that you like it to be kind of your own stamp on your body of knowledge. So is there one word that you particularly like about your approach? One term that you would highlight as?
Well, using it to grow and change. I'm not really sure about a term or a body of knowledge or how I'll be remembered.
So, and again, this idea of change, I mean, this makes me think of something that I apologize we haven't done, is to kind of plug your website and your work and where people can find out more about you. And your website is The Changeworks, right? Give us your website, Tom.
It's thechangeworks, all one word, .com.
Yeah, great.
I have a lot of recordings and a couple of books and some videos, all available through the Shameless Commerce division.
Hey, I encourage our listeners to go there and to visit Tom and his work. I've been in the Enneagram game a long time, seen a lot of people come and go. Tom's one of the good guys. So visit his website, read his books, watch his videos, and you'll be better off for it. So, Tom, we want to thank you for joining us for these couple of hours here.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right, good. All right. Maria Jose, as always, thank you. And we will see you next time on the Enneagram in a Movie podcast. Thank you for listening to the Enneagram in a Movie podcast, part of the Awareness to Action podcast network. Find out more about the Enneagram and our offerings at awareness-to-action.com. And if you enjoyed the episode, please go online and give us a review. We'll see you next time.